Hey everyone, welcome back to Tactical Magic. This is Molly Mandelberg, your host, and I have a fascinating conversation for you on this episode today. I don't know about you, but when things are going crazy in my life, I have a fun little hobby of looking up what the stars and planets are doing. And I find it really comforting to notice when the horoscope or the birth chart or the Chani app or whatever it is I'm looking at the moment confirms that it's not just me, that something else is really going on here. But what I love and what I've been sort of digging into over the last couple years is there's a lot of information out there that can support us to harness the power of our birth chart, the stars, the cosmos of the moment, and also our unique sort of blueprint or design to utilize that to run our businesses more smoothly, with more ease, and more effectively, depending on the temperature of the world that we're living in right now, but also the temperature of where we're at in our own cycles and our own rhythms. So I have an expert on that with me here today. I'm going to pause for the little intro thing. We'll be back in just a sec. It's not just about mastering technology. It's not just about brand or messaging. It's not just about making more money. It's about showing up in a big way so your people can find you. This is about bringing your most wild and authentic self into the hustle and grind. Welcome to Tactical Magic, a business strategies podcast for the warrior goddess entrepreneur. Awesome. So I have Meaghan Dunham here on the line with me today. And Meaghan is an energetics and intuitive business coach with 15 years of experience in public education, corporate marketing, and healing through holistic and spiritual modalities. With a master's degree in education and 4 years of experience in startup culture, Meaghan blends her strengths to provide a one-of-a-kind business coaching and consultation experience. In addition to coaching healers and creatives, Meaghan also teaches people of all backgrounds about the power of energetic modalities as tools to cultivate emotional intelligence and leadership skills in their businesses. Welcome to the show, Meaghan.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm stoked to have you. So tell us, one of the questions I almost always ask, because there's a lot of people who are in the budding phases or the hobby phases of their businesses and wondering, should I even bother? How did you get into doing this work? Like, what's your journey into what you're doing now?
Mm, How much time do we have?
30 minutes.
So I have kind of always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I'm an Aries sun, Capricorn rising, so I have a lot of that initiatory energy. And in 2020, right around the time when the pandemic started and, we all started working from home or just shifting the way that we were working, I realized that it was kind of now or never to do what I wanted to do.
Mm.
It was almost kind of like a shock to my system in obviously lots of different ways. So that year in October, my grandmother passed away, and my grandmother she and I were very close. And when she passed, one of the final conversations I had with her, I remember her talking about how much she admired my ability to just kind of take charge and do the things that I wanted to do in my life. And as a woman who grew up in the 50s, she didn't really have a lot of those same opportunities. And when she passed, I felt like it was now time for me to honor her and her energy and her memory. And so 2 months later, I quit my job and I started freelance marketing, kind of like marketing consulting and marketing support. And I did that for a little while and it was great, but I realized that I wanted to incorporate more. I felt like I wasn't doing everything that I wanted to do. So in 2022, I started experimenting with adding in astrology, and I had been studying astrology since 2017 and Ayurveda, which I had been studying since 2019, because I was seeing that these specific modalities were really supportive in helping us to better understand ourselves. And as I shifted into business coaching, I realized that I could use those modalities to help people better understand themselves and then in turn better understand how they could show up in their business. So that's where I am now, long story short. And I feel like it's ever evolving, but I'm just really excited to be at this moment.
Yeah, I love that. And I had a very similar journey I started my business doing hypnotherapy and then found my way to business coaching But when I started the business coaching, it was like, oh no, people want the tactics, the tech, the strategy from me. They don't want the mystical magical. And then it was like, oh no, I cannot do this without also supporting the mystical magical spiritual side of things. And so then it's been, how can I synthesize that more and more I find on my coaching calls, people are wanting the spiritual download reconnection to their deepest, truest self more than they want the strategy and the tactics and the pieces of the puzzle put together. So I love
Mhm.
that. I have a very similar experience of that. And yes, if you're a spiritual, mystical, magical being, your business is going to include that side of you. It's got to, or that side of you will shrivel up and start feeling painful. So I love that that was your experience as well. Can you give us sort of an overview of what it looks like to incorporate an awareness of astrology and Ayurveda into a business?
So glad you asked. So, one of the first things that I do with my clients, specifically people who come to me and want to work one to one, is that our first meeting is all about getting to know them. We do a deep dive into their astrology chart. I do a full reading for them so that they understand all of the different aspects of their chart and how they can use it to support them in being more successful in their business and making more aligned choices. And we also talk about their Ayurvedic constitution, which is called a dosha, because I find that that energy as well is influencing not necessarily the choices that we make, but the way that we show up energetically, especially if we realize that we are constantly being manipulated and impacted by the energy around us. It's really important to know what our Ayurvedic constitution is, because Ayurveda is all about living in tune with the world around us, living in tune with nature. And I don't know about you, but I know a lot of people are really trying to get back to that understanding of being more in tune with what's happening in the seasons and the cycles around us. So we do that. And then once they have that understanding, we begin to look at the systems and processes that they already have in place and how their charts and their constitution can either support continuing to do certain things and continuing to make decisions in certain areas or letting go of certain things. There's also a lot of auditing to make sure that they're moving in the direction that feels most aligned with their own natural energy. And there are some really tough conversations about letting go of things that feel very, very difficult, that are causing a lot of friction. But I find that when we can come at it through the lens of understanding ourselves through our chart and through our constitution, it often gives my clients more, almost like I call it a cosmic permission slip
Mm.
to make certain choices without feeling the guilt or the frustration as much as maybe they would be if they weren't using those tools.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really important thing. I mean, permission is huge in any kind of creative endeavor, but definitely in running a business and recognizing that a lot of the choices we make are made, especially as entrepreneurs, because we think we should, or because we've assumed from a mentor or from status quo that that is the right next step. And that to get, I love that cosmic permission slip that says you don't actually have to choose that, or that that isn't, necessarily for you. It's okay to move in a different direction, or it's okay to claim this direction, even if you think it wasn't for you, because it is aligned indeed. Yeah, there's so much like comfort and allowance in that. I imagine that's brings a lot of ease to your clients.
I think, yeah, I think that understanding that you were born this way for a reason, you were born with this exact combination of energy and planets and aspects, and giving yourself permission to explore all of that and what it entails and how it makes you you is a really important part of the work that I do with the people that I work with. I think that there's something really magical about understanding that you are once in a lifetime,
Mhm.
that no one is ever going to have the same exact combination of energy that you have. And I think that that message really translates into more strength and more courage and more excitement about making your business your own.
Mm, yeah, definitely. Can you give us a little bit more insight into the different doshas and how those can interplay into a business? Like, yeah, what is that? How does that look?
Hmm. So, if you're not familiar with Ayurveda, Ayurveda is the understanding that the elements of the world and nature specifically can influence the way or should influence the way that we live our lives. And it's all about getting back into balance with the natural flow of that energy. So in Ayurveda, we have three doshas or constitutions that are a makeup of different elements. The different elements are fire, water, air, earth, and space or ether. And those three doshas are pitta, which is a combination of fire and water, kapha, which is a combination of earth and water, and vata, which is a combination of air and space. And if you think about those specific elements, it can give you a lot of insight into what that particular dosha might look like, either in nature or in ourselves, in our bodies, because each of us has a constitution. So we'll typically have a primary dosha, which is one of those pitta, kapha, vata, and then we'll have a secondary dosha, which is the primary is what we have the most energy of, the most elements, in our specific chart. And then the secondary is, okay, we have that there, but what often happens is that our secondary dosha is the one that goes out of balance because we're not necessarily as aware of that particular energy.
Mm.
So I'll use myself as an example. I am a pitta kapha.
I'm
So
pretty
my
sure I'm a kapha pitta.
okay, so we're opposite. So my main energy constitution is fire and water. And if we think about the elements of, excuse me, fire and water, in Ayurveda, we call pitta an outward moving energy because it's very focused. And if you think about water kind of like flowing down a river, it's very focused and it's moving very quickly. And that's kind of the energy, and it's very powerful as well. That's kind of the energy of Pitta. Pitta is the initiator. It's the one that gets things done. It's the one that has the most energy of all the doshas. And so that's kind of an example of a person who has that main constitution of Pitta, what you might experience when you're interacting with that person. Whereas Kapha is kind of, I wouldn't say it's the opposite, but it's kind of a balancing energy. It's earth and water. And when we think about earth and water coming together, we often think of mud. And mud is very stable, it's very predictable, it doesn't move very quickly, but you can also get stuck.
Mhm.
So, with a person who's a kapha primary dosha, they might find that they are the person who people come to because they know that they're always going to be there. They know that they're always going to be stable, predictable, supportive. But with a kapha dosha, you might find that you don't like change as much. It feels difficult. And so understanding those types of, and likewise with pitta, right? Because pitta is moving so fast all the time, it's really hard for pitta to slow down. And pitta might get frustrated when they have to slow down.
Mm.
And so understanding those types of archetypes and what they could represent for you and your primary dosha can give you a really good insight into what I like to call your vulnerabilities. So, building in guardrails for your vulnerabilities in your business is a really, really important step that I don't think a lot of people take. There's a lot of emphasis on playing to your strengths, which is great. And it's very important to understand your strengths. But I would argue that it's just as important to understand what your vulnerabilities are. And I don't call them weaknesses because there is a negative connotation with that word, and I don't necessarily like it.
Mhm.
I want to use the word vulnerability because it can often be something that is a blind spot that you're not necessarily aware of, or it can be something that you feel guilty or shameful about. And just understanding that it's not something to be afraid of, it's not something to be ashamed of, but rather it's just something that you have to build in extra padding for,
Mm.
is the way that I like to approach it when I'm talking to my clients about how to use that energy to support them in growing their business.
So, for example, if Pata or Pitta is very fast moving, that some vulnerability in there may be that they require a built-in rest, or they
Mhm.
require like structured set points where it's not moving time, and that's not frustrating to slow down. It's like known that that's coming.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What would be an example for one for kapha, just in case I'm kapha?
Yeah. So, like I said, Kapha is the one who doesn't like change. So, Kapha can often get started on a project and get 6 months into a project and realize that there's no passion there anymore
Mm,
because they're just continuing to follow all the steps that they thought they should. Kapha is the one who really gets caught up in the should.
mm,
And so, it's really important as a Kapha to have those check-in points where you're asking yourself, am I still following my passion? Does this still light me up? And if it doesn't, it's okay to refocus and change my direction.
yeah. And that's definitely a muscle that we can build over time.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Absolutely.
have that. I have that built into my operating system now. Is the energy here for this creation? I know it's on my calendar to do this right now, but is the energy here for this right now? And if it's not, then it doesn't happen.
Hmm.
The things
Hmm.
that get worked on are the things that are alive, and that keeps the energy moving for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I don't want to leave our Vata friends out because I know that there are a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah.
Vata
What
people
are
in the
they up to?
spiritual community. So if you think about the elements of Vata, Vata is air and space. And so you can imagine that someone who has a Vata constitution has a hard time grounding.
Mm,
There's a lot of creative energy. There's a lot of seeing things from a larger perspective with Vata, which is really great to be in an industry where things are constantly shifting and moving. But what happens is that Vata can get so lost in all of the change and all of the constant shifting that they lose themselves. And so for Vata, the lesson is to check in with yourself and make sure that you're grounding yourself back into reality rather than thinking that it's almost sort of like Pisces energy, where Pisces kind of gets lost. It's a reminder to refocus and to come back to the core essence of what you're doing and why you're doing it. And also to make sure that you finish what you have set out to complete in the first place.
yeah. Beautiful. I want to go back to the astrology too before we run out of time because you said you're Aries and Capricorn rising, and
Hmm.
I'm Capricorn with Aries moon,
Wow.
Cancer rising. So I just think it's funny that we have some similarities there. But can you speak a little bit to how your astrology chart can point you in the right direction with your business?
Hmm. So obviously, I think it's really important to look at your big three because those are the energetic frequencies that are going to give you the most information about who you are and what you love, what you enjoy, and how you show up in the world. And so if you don't know what your big three are, that's your sun, your moon, and your rising sign. But there are also aspects of your chart that can really support you specifically in business. If we think about your 10th house and your midheaven, right? That's your house of business, and your midheaven is the highest point in your astrology chart, and it points you toward your public life. So, taking a look at that and where it's located, and what kind of indicators could point toward success for you in your business, and where you might be most recognized or most able to express your energy. And then we have things like I actually did an email series about this a couple of months ago because there are parts of your astrology chart that I think people kind of forget about when they're thinking about being a business owner. And one of them is your seventh house, which is all about relationships. It's really, really important to understand what your seventh house placement is because that can give you a better understanding of how you show up in relationships and cultivate relationships in your business. And if you don't have relationships, then it's really hard to grow a successful business. So that's just an example of some of the things that I look at. And then, of course, I look at Mars. Mars is motivation. Saturn is long-term planning. Saturn is often connected, it is connected to the 10th house. So it's often thought about as like a business placement in your astrology chart.
Mm,
And then we often also look at the transits that are happening. So I'll take a look at my client's chart and I'll say, okay, well, you have, you know, Jupiter is crossing over your midheaven at this point, and that means that there could be a lot more visibility and abundance in your business. So how can we leverage that at this specific time?
mm, yeah. I have a friend who is kind of a astrology hobbyist, and I wish she would do more with it because she, can pull all those data points and loves to geek out on it. But she would make me like a year's worth of astrological
Mhm.
notable points for me. Like, here's a good day to launch for you. Here's a good day to chill for you. Or here's like an ideal window of time where sharing about stuff is going to be good or meeting with people is going to be good. And I love having that. I just have a document on I call it auspicious dates. I have a little
Yeah.
document on my computer where I can be like, okay, I'm thinking about launching. When is the best date? And then for my calendar, okay, now let me check the auspicious dates. And almost always, if I didn't check the auspicious dates first, I would accidentally place my workshop on the right day for my auspicious dates to line up with my chart. Just this weird organic knowing or something,
Mhm.
which I love. But yeah, I would say if you're a business owner and you are tired of, the bro marketing and the shoulds and the have tos and the it's got to be this way to work situation, leaning into your makeup, your constitution, your dosha, or your chart, your astrology, or even just your like menstrual cycle can be a huge game changer in your creativity, your creative productivity, your like alignment with what you're creating, the possibilities for you feeling in tune and in sync with what you're putting out into the world just go way up when you start
Mhm.
honoring that you are this multidimensional, multifaceted creature that has natural tendencies and natural capacities and natural vulnerabilities, like you said, that it's so helpful to be aware of.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's actually funny because I actually came to this work through emotional intelligence,
Mm.
through the emotional intelligence and social emotional learning space. I started working for a company that focused on that in 2017. And so my lens, through which I am looking at all of these different energetic modalities and how they can support us is always through that lens, through the lens of emotional intelligence. And I think it's so funny because it's kind of become a buzzword for people. I used to be a teacher and it was a buzzword in education to teach our students SEL skills, but it's also a buzzword in corporate spaces as well. And it obviously then is maybe like a natural transition to bring that into being a business owner because as an entrepreneur, you really have to have those types of skills to be able to build a successful business, a lasting successful business, I should say. And so I think it's been really fun to kind of map those very strategic and logical thought processes about or around emotional intelligence to the energetic modalities that people have been studying and learning about for thousands of years. It's almost like, in a lot of ways, our society is beginning to remember these types of things that were so important to us so long ago. And I'm just really excited to see where that takes us.
Yeah. And you have a really beautiful way of hosting people in that work. Would you tell us about the Venusian Society?
Yeah. So I created the Venusian Society back in the summer, and I wanted to create a space where people who wanted to learn more about these spiritual and energetic modalities felt like they could come and have honest and open conversations. I feel like there are multiple different membership communities for people who want to grow and build their businesses, which is great. But there wasn't necessarily a group, a very small and intimate group, in my personal opinion, that allowed people to have these really vulnerable conversations about including these things in their business, perhaps for the first time. So that was kind of what sparked the Venusian Society. And it is a beautiful group. We have 12 members, so it's really small and intimate, which I enjoy because I think that gives people an opportunity to really get to know one another. And it's just a place where we're learning about how to incorporate these things into our business. We have people who come in every month and teach us about different types of ways that we can support our decision-making processes. We had someone come in. We have someone who's coming in a couple of weeks, and she's teaching us how to use the Enneagram to write copy for our sales pages, which
Mm,
is really cool. And then we have somebody who's coming in and helping us do some money magic in January. And I think that the combination of what I like to call the practical and pragmatic with the esoteric and mystical is where I feel like I really shine. And that's basically what the Venusian Society is all about.
love it. Yeah. On a show called Tactical Magic, we definitely line up with those two things synthesizing. Definitely. Well, I imagine there's a lot of people who are leaning in and want to know more. What are some of the best places that people can go and follow you and find out more?
Yeah, of course. So I have a website, meaghandunham.com, and I'm sure that will be in the show notes. My name is very interesting to spell. And you can always find me. I am really active on Instagram at meaghan.m.dunham. And then I also am super active on Threads, which is where we met. Same username. And if you have any questions or, you want to kind of brainstorm anything, my DMs are always open. So,
Awesome. Yeah. And shout out to Threads because I've been on all the social media platforms forever. And it's like the most authentic and supportive and alive and easy to interact with
mhm.
platform of all of them. You don't have to make videos and pictures. You can just chat with people. I love it.
Thank you, Jupiter and Gemini.
Yay. Awesome. So, yeah, you've shared so much wisdom already on this show today. I'm wondering if there's any last words of wisdom that you want to leave people with.
I think one of the hardest lessons that I learned as an entrepreneur, and I'm very thankful that I learned it early on, is that just as you said earlier, it's important to understand that you are building a business for no one else other than you. It's great to get advice from other people, and it's great to see how things work for other people. But at the end of the day, you have to know that every decision that you make should work for you. And if you're feeling stuck or frustrated because you feel like you've been trying everything that people have been giving you advice on and telling you XYZ to do, and you're still not feeling like you're in alignment or you're not feeling like you're growing, I think that's the moment when it's really important to check back in with yourself. Your values, your beliefs, your strengths, your vulnerabilities, even are the beautiful magic that will make your business what it needs to be. And so I would just say, don't be afraid to let yourself shine.
And be you. Being you
Hmm.
changes the world. Love that. Thank you so much for all that you've shared. Thank you for following that curiosity to the different passions you had that led to the work that you're getting to do in the world now. It's brave, it's courageous, and it's also really beautiful to witness people following that curiosity towards something and seeing it work out and getting to support people. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for being on the show.
Hmm.
And thank you, everyone out there, for listening or watching. If you have a business bestie who is down with the stars or who is interested in Ayurveda and who hasn't been synthesizing those together yet, check out the show. Send the show to them and give them a connection to Meaghan so that they can maybe have an easier time with bridging those two worlds together and making that support system for their business even stronger. And whatever happens, keep asking big questions and taking bold action because you are here for a reason. See you next time.